It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. I'm Pete Francis, joined by Willie Witten. Today, our special guest is Ariel Posen. He just released a new album called Headway. Ariel, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
It's my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
So you come from a musical family. What was that like kind of growing up? And tell us how you kind of got started with guitar and music.
Well, my parents had a band, and as young as 2 months old, I was already traveling on airplanes with them just to go to their shows. If I couldn't stay with the grandparents, or if it made sense to just go along with them. So, basically up until I was 13 or 14, like when I was old enough to just not really want to do that anymore. When I was old enough to like not have to be chaperoned to their things. And they would travel on weekends, they would travel during the summers for festivals, but during the weeks they were always home. They had day jobs. But my brother and I were just immersed in it. We would go to these shows, go to these festivals, hang out backstage, meet other bands and musicians, and it's just all we knew. And generationally, my mom's side of the family are all musicians too. So it was just natural for us to take up music and take up an instrument. And I started on piano when I was around 6, and about a year later, pardon me, everyone started playing guitar at school. It was the mid-90s. Guitar was the coolest thing. The Beatles anthology came out, and honestly, it was a bunch of bands like Nirvana and Green Day and Rage Against the Machine, Chili Peppers, and a bunch more that was kind of like, yeah, I want to play guitar. I want to do that. And it was just more so guitar in an ensemble rather than guitar players. That's what got me started.
Okay, so when you talk about the mid-90s and you mentioned some of those bands, the first thing that comes to my mind, putting the two together, your parents are musicians, then you have the likes of Green Day. So when you talk about your early year guitar evolution, did you learn more from the likes of throwing in the Green Day CD, or were your mom and dad sort of giving you some pointers, or a little bit of both? How did that shake out?
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit of both. My dad's a bass player. My mom plays guitar. She's a piano player, but she does play guitar. So they were feeding tips all the time, never pushing any kind of music on me in any way. But whatever I was listening to or whatever I was trying to learn, they do their best to just try to accommodate and help teach me it. I did have like a guitar teacher. I had lessons and all that stuff. So, that's what I was using to learn Pretty Woman and Day Tripper and all like the first things that one learns when starting guitar. And yeah, at the same time, all my friends were learning songs. Like, you were cool if you knew this song or this riff or that riff or that riff. And every week I would just have a different song or riff or like part of a solo that I wanted to learn. And I would just tell my teacher, yeah, that's what I want to work on. And he'd show me, or he'd bring notation or a tab the next week, and that's another one I can cross off the list. What about this one? What's going on here? It's like, oh, I think you're not quite ready for that, but I just wanted to teach me it. Okay, and I probably wasn't ready for it, and it just went on from there. It was just fueled by being inspired by it. And just like slide came a lot later. Like, I think of my guitar journey in a few phases. I played for about 10 years almost, where I was very passionate about it, but I didn't really take it seriously, like to a point where I thought this could be my job. Like when I was 14, I started playing gigs. Like, that was the first time I started, hey, here is money for a music that you played at this party or something. I was like, okay, I could start making money doing this, but I still didn't really take it really seriously until I was about 16. And that's when I stumbled upon Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Vaughan, Hendrix, Clapton, Robin Ford, and that just opened up a whole other world to me. So I started taking guitar and music so much more seriously, and we can get into that in a sec. But from there, when I was, I started working full time as a session musician, hired gun, basically when I was 18, 19. And on any gig that you do, whether it's a country gig or a pop gig or a blues gig or a R&B gig or a whatever gig, oftentimes you're going to, first of all, you're learning other people's parts. You're learning songs, you're learning a set list. That's your job. And oftentimes you learn something with a slide part. So, if you're 101 being a session or hired gun guitar player, make sure you got a couple capos, make sure you got a couple slides in case, make sure you got some spare picks. It's just part of the toolbox that everyone has to be that Swiss Army knife as a working musician, specifically guitar player. And I just recall taking a natural liking to slide, but not really thinking much of it, and would play it, the parts. And often they'd go, "Yay, that was cool what you did on those songs. Why don't you do them on these songs too with the slide?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." And I just did it more, and it became natural. And then I started listening to some slide players that really, I saw Derek Trucks, I've seen Sonny Landreth, I've seen Daniel Lanois do his thing, like pedal steel stuff, and even like Jerry Douglas on dobro. And I've, put time into Bonnie Raitt, Ry Cooder, George Harrison, like all these classic guys. And then there was a Canadian guy named Kevin Bright who I started listening to, and it just spoke to me in a very specific, where I was like, okay, I need to take a guitar, tune it to open E, and I need to learn how to navigate my way around open tuning. And I just took a guitar, took a Strat that I tuned to open E on every gig I did. Not always the idea, but it helped me apply everything and kind of learn it in the moment. That's just how it works for me. It needs to click in context. And there's a lot of trial by fire, sometimes it was rough, sometimes it was great. I had a lot of breakthroughs on stage. But that helped split the brain into tunings. So yeah, that's kind of where this slide got going.
Sorry. Before you completed a couple now, 2 solo albums to be exact, and also a live album.
Yeah.
Before that, yeah. I don't know, certainly it's not your start, but you started in with playing with the Brothers Landreth. How did you link up with them? And if you could talk a little bit about your experiences, I know you've already spoken about being the hired gun, but it sounds like with them, you were more than just a hired gun. Listening to the Brothers Landreth and yourself, it seems like there was some interplay.
Well, I didn't start with them. I mean, that was just a gig that I played with them for about 5 years. I was already playing with a bunch of other artists before. I was like on tour buses and like doing a lot more comfier gigs per se. And before I joined them, and we all hopped in the van, so to speak. But all those guys, I've been my friends since I was, a teenager. We all grew up together playing music and hanging out in our circle of friends. So it wasn't how did you hook up with those guys? It's like that's my circle of friends.
Did you go to the same school with them?
No, but we all have. I mean, Winnipeg is very small, and we all there's somehow you just know other people. Like Joey's girlfriend in high school was in my first band in high school, and that's when I first met him. And it's just like, it's Winnipeg. It's a very small place like that. And so, yeah, they were all, everyone in that band were all session hired gun, same thing. So they started the band, which is it's really an artist gig. Like, it seems like it's a band, but it's their band. It's like James Taylor and his band. It's like those guys, it's their gig. They started doing that. And oh, sorry guys.
It's okay.
We got you.
Did that screw everything up?
Nope.
You're back.
That was a phone call. Sorry. Yeah, they started doing their gig. They started doing it, and I joined along maybe, I don't know, like a year into them doing it for a few years. And I guess it, yeah, maybe seemed more than sideman, but it was really just a hired gun gig. But it was fun. Good times. Sorry, was there another question attached to that? Did I miss it?
No, but what I did want to go back to, because you had mentioned it and you stuck right to our topic, which was great because we loved hearing that. But you started to talk about when you were getting really serious into guitar.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, yeah, when I first heard Stevie Ray Vaughan, again, I can't stress enough that I didn't grow up listening to guitar players. Like I didn't. My childhood was not Hendrix and Clapton and like the classic someone like me where they're at now musically. You would usually have an upbringing listening to like BB King and on all these, but I didn't.
Like I'm
It was
guessing like
bands,
none of your
and it was
friends were
rock
listening
music
to
and
that
pop
sort
music.
of music.
So correct. Yeah. We were all listening to the same stuff. I mean, a lot. We were really listening to the Beatles a lot. We were listening to Fish. We were listening to, actually, Fish. Interestingly enough, like I'm not a huge Fish head or anything like that, but that was probably like when it started, like in terms of just listening to the muso side of music, like the playing and arrangements and parts rather than songs. They have amazing songs, but there's something about the playing, like band. Trey Anastasia, what a player, what a singer, what a writer. I just remember taking a different attention to, like, and we were like geeking out, nerding out over the music and like the parts and specific playing rather than just like love this song, love this song. It was just like, oh, that stop in the middle of Stash when they do that, you're just like stuff like that. So when I first heard Stevie Ray Vaughan, and of course, like it's not like I'd never heard of him. They'd always pass you by, and I just wasn't paying attention. But when I first heard Scuttle Button, I know most people have the same, just that elated experience of like a slap in the face of like, how is this real? It was just like perfect with so much aggression, but so much perfection and elegance. And I listened to that whole record, couldn't stand the weather. And from that moment on, it's like I put my head down and I never brought it back up. It inspired me so greatly. It actually, I think a month before I heard that, I was kind of like, I ran out of steam on guitar, and primarily because I wasn't taking it seriously enough. I kind of felt like I had said all I wanted to say on the instrument. Like I had just kind of had enough. I was playing drums. I had started taking up drums because I was just like, yeah, I'm kind of bored. I'm going to play this. And then I heard that and it was just like, wow, I was so wrong. I got a lot of work to do. And I just like have never stopped on that same frame of mind.
Do you remember what turned you on to that record?
Good question. It might have been a Guitar Techniques magazine, which is a UK based magazine, but I remember picking it up at McNally Robinson, which is a bookstore here in Winnipeg. And it was the one. No, it was before that. It was definitely a few years before that. But I don't know if you remember the issue of Guitar Techniques where Guthrie Govan does like a 3 or 4 minute songs, like emulating the style of like 50 players. Do you remember that?
I don't.
I think I'm like 5% sure Stevie was on the cover of that and they did a feature on him. But I'm getting my time frame mixed up because that would have been like 2003 or 2004. This was earlier than that. Like I got into him like early 2000s. Like I said, when I was like 15 or something like that. And I must have stumbled on it on TV or by accident. My dad for almost 30 years worked at the CBC, which is like the biggest radio and TV situation here in Canada. And whenever I didn't have school, like when you were young enough where you had to go to work with your parents, and before Spotify, even before Napster and all that stuff. Like if you wanted to hear music, you had to go to buy it. You had to go buy a CD.
Right.
And I go to work with him. He'd be working. He'd say, "Yeah, you know what to do, Ari. I'll go to the library." And I'd go to the library, and you open the door, and it's like literally every album that's out and that has been out is there. And I would just collect CDs, grab a pair of headphones, and I would sit there for 8 hours until he was done work, listening to all these albums, reading through the liner notes, reading through this. You know, I'd see stuff I loved, I'd find stuff I loved, and then I'd be like, "Oh, I remember seeing that on a commercial. I remember, oh yeah, Stevie Ray Vaughan on it could have been something like that, where it was in passing. I was like, oh yeah, maybe I'll check that out." And I grabbed it and listened to it, and sure enough, it just floored me. And it was like I was never the same again.
That must have been amazing as a kid, having that sort of access to music before, you know, Spotify and all the streaming platforms.
Unbelievable. And I never took that for granted. I thought it was such, and like the odd times they had doubles of CDs when I could just take them home and keep them. Like when they had a spare. As a kid, that's amazing, because I would cut the lawn just to get $13 or like $15 so I could afford to buy an album, you know? That also gave me just a respect for liner notes and credits for band members and players and people involved in records, and even lyrics. I love listening to a song and like reading the lyrics as they go, seeing who played on it, seeing where it was recorded, seeing when it was, just all that stuff. You know, that's the stuff we're really missing out on with music these days. And I try to keep that stuff alive with my when I do it physically. But even when I post, I always want to make sure people know who was involved. You know, I as a sideman or a session musician, your job is you do something, and that's like, it's not about you. You're just fitting into someone else's picture, right? You're playing on someone's album or something. But it's still nice to be credited for the work you do. And I feel like a lot of people don't get the notoriety they should for playing. Like so many people that no one would know who they are. Right. Some of them have done my favorite things ever on a record. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So on your latest, just released about a week ago, for those who go and check out Headway and just get it maybe on a Spotify or an Apple Music or a Tidal, some of these services are better than others. But with, you know, the hard copy becoming less popular, how do you feel about your songs being released? Do you try to make up for that in podcasting? Do you try to make up for that on some of your live feeds? Because a lot of people who are just catching you on a streaming service won't get to see everyone who is involved in your latest.
You're talking about just in terms of getting the credits out there and just stuff like that.
On the hard copy, it's easy enough.
Hard copy is easy enough. You can put information. I mean, when my distributors put out my music, they have all the liner notes and they put in that information for sure. But like I always, you know, I submit my reports to like allmusic.com to make sure credits are always there. Anytime I do an interview or podcast, I will say it. Whenever I put up a video, YouTube or whatever, like I'll always put the credits. That's important to me, like because it's really doing an album is a team effort, and like everyone that's involved in it should be credited. It's just how I am. It's just like how I like to be. Like on the other end of it, as a sideman, as a session musician, it's always nice when I've played on a record or played on a band's thing or someone's single, and like I'm not looking for a shout out, but it's, you know what I mean. But it's nice to be recognized for your work and say, oh yeah, and on drums we have, oh, and Ariel played guitar. I was like, oh, that's nice. It's like it's not going to change anything, but it's just nice to recognize that there's a lot of people involved in making a project like that. So yeah, I'm all for that. As however I can, I will do that. Yeah.
So let's talk about your new album, Headway. Just came out. Great album, by the way.
Thank you.
This is your second solo album.
Yeah.
I guess what were your biggest goals for this album? What were you looking to accomplish? What do you feel makes it different from your first solo album?
I don't know that I even had goals. I'm proud of my first album, and I felt like I needed to get one out of the way first, and then I could make the album I really wanted to make. And that sounds weird because it sounds like I didn't want to make my first one. But your first one is very special, but it's also, me personally speaking, I feel like I was still kind of figuring it out, so to speak, just who I am, my sound, just like it's one thing to find your voice as a guitar player. It's one thing to find your voice as a singer. And then to find your voice as an artist, I think that takes not one album, but years and years. And you notice that anyone that you listen to keeps evolving, keeps changing, except AC/DC. They just make the same record and it works, and it's great.
It works, yeah.
But going into the second record, my first album, I had 8 songs. I recorded 7 of them, plus 3 little instrumental tracks. Once that was done, I was on the road a lot, and I was writing a lot more. So I had about 20 songs. So I picked 12 of those. I had been at it longer, so I was just more comfortable going into it. I was more sure of what I wanted to do. Like, I had sat on these songs a little longer, so my vision was a lot clearer. And I wasn't trying to, do anything crazy different. I just wanted to, it's like, okay, that chapter 1 is my first record. Now let's do chapter 2. And for me, it was just pick up where we left off. But in that time of where we're picking up where I left off, I've listened to different music. I've been inspired by different things. And that stuff that inspired, production, like just aesthetics, like how the drums sound, how the bass sounds, like not even necessarily guitar things, just on a production level. I'm just always listening to different stuff, and I got inspired, and it was just to continue on. It was time for another record, and I was ready, and I was motivated, and
So let me ask you about this, because today music is such a singles world. You've put out a lot of music videos, and it seems like that's something that you're doing on a pretty regular basis. Is that sort of a scheduled thing for you? Like, how strategic are you in terms of releasing music videos for your singles?
Well, extremely. I mean, first of all, this record was supposed to come out in September of last year. With the current situation we're in, my team and I decided that March 5th would be good because it would just give us a lot of time. And you can only sit on something for so long. Like if I sat on this album another year until the world was back to normal, I don't know that I would be feeling it,
Right.
So in terms of music videos and content, here's the thing. Normally, I'll just tell you how it was. So my first record, I put out one single, first single. I did a big US tour just on that one single. I had put no other music in the world, but just one single. And obviously I played the songs at the shows, but one single was out. Second single came out, did a little more, whatever, some appearances, some couple one-off gigs. Then the album came out. So it was really just a 4-month lead up. But once the album came out, I was on the road in the UK. I did a cross Canada tour. I did more US touring. I put out a live EP, and then I did Familiar Ground, which was a full concert of that album, basically. So I kept it going. But because you can tour, that extends the conversation of an album cycle, essentially. This time around, I said, okay, well, we got to change it up. We got to think more digitally because we can't do anything in person. So, my first record, I put out 2 singles only, and I put out the last one maybe a week before the album came out. This time we did 5 singles because I wanted to stretch it out and, again, just add build up to it. So I made sure that every song had a lyric video, which, my followers and people that probably, they want to see the playing. So it was like performance videos with me, JJ and Julian, but with lyric videos. And then last summer we recorded every single song with the full band live off the floor. So like I have videos of basically every song off the album. So I've just been trying to find a way to not make it an onslaught of too many videos, but like to keep the conversation going. I was like thinking well in advance, just to not end up in a position where, okay, great, now the album's out and we can't do it, but I don't have anything left in the tank, like in terms of content or whatever. So yeah, I've always been thinking that way, like content minded, I guess. But in this time of COVID and that being our only way of getting stuff out there, I've just put even more into that, and I'm glad I did.
Is that something, when things open up, will you continue to do that? Is that something that's going to be added on, or was this a stopgap?
Oh, here's the thing. I was already doing that. I've always been active for doing stuff like that. Sure, it's been just increased a little bit right now because it's kind of all we have right now. But yeah, moving forward, also.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing missing from what I do and how I'm releasing a record is that I can't go and perform it live in different countries all over the world. Other than that, everything's the same. Everything is exactly how I would have done it, just more this time in terms of the digital side. However, I am doing a concert March 25th. I'm doing a live stream, like with the band. Buy a ticket, my website. But it's like, it's not ideal still. It's not playing in front of humans. It's playing in front of humans on their computer, but not in the same room. But hey, we gotta take what we can get right now.
And you're doing some other things on YouTube as far as video content. Just for musicians today, I mean, how important is it just to have kind of that extra, I guess, tool in the toolbox now, and just in terms of producing content and, interesting YouTube videos, Instagram videos, those sort of things?
Well, here's how I think of it. YouTube, I have a lot of friends who YouTube is their job full time. They make a really good living at it. And that's a lot of work. That's like whole other level of work. I'm not doing that. Like I do my thing. Whatever, it's great, all good. But like something like Instagram, for example, I've always been active on it. But Instagram is not, it's a platform for they're highlight reels.
Does it feel more disposable, Instagram, than the other platforms?
Well, I mean, Instagram is my biggest platform for sure. But I mean, at the end of the day, you could have thousands and thousands of followers, but if people aren't buying tickets to your shows or buying records, then it really mean anything. You want to make sure that your online, at least this is how I think. What matters more than your stats, how they look, is that they actually equal into real life value.
Right.
So people showing up to shows, buying album physicals or whatever, that's what's important. But the more you can build on there is great, because it's promotion. It's how you get the word out, and you put out what you want people to see. Hey, there's a tour. Hey, album's coming out. Hey, check out this pedal I'm put together with a friend. Whatever. Like little highlight reels. If you want the full deal, come to a show. If you want the full thing, buy the album or listen to the album. It's just like little highlight packages. It's all good. I mean, don't get me wrong. Imagine if Instagram and Facebook was around in the 90s or in the 80s. Like, not that it was needed, because the music industry was doing so much better then. But imagine if like Madonna or Michael Jackson were on Instagram in the 80s, just showing content. I just like it would have made them even larger than life, and they were the biggest thing in the world. Or actually, maybe it would have done the opposite.
Does it really kind of like reduce the mystery a little bit, though? Oh,
for sure, big time. But that's what people like, I think, and certain like famous people. From what I'm seeing, like Some people embrace it, some don't. Some try to keep that mystique still, and some are just full, like, I'm into it. I'm going to show you in my bathrobe making coffee with my dog here. Don't care.
Yeah. Well, Ariel, just going forward, any closing thoughts? Any closing thoughts? Any things you're looking to accomplish besides obviously get back on the road? Anything we haven't touched on that you want to finish up with?
I mean, not really. Album is just a week and a bit out. Go check it out. I have a lot more music that I am working on, and I can't wait to start getting even more music out. So, and yeah, once shows come back, fantastic, of course. But yeah, check out the album. That's
and then with Headway, are you doing any physical copies for that?
Oh yeah, you can buy vinyl, you can buy a CD, all on my site, arielposen.com.
Right on.
Or Amazon, or like any. But go for my site.
Best to your site first. It'll be
then it goes to him.
Site.
It all, yeah. Go to my site.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for the time today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Pleasure.
All right, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Blues Rock Show. For Ariel Posen and Willie Witten, I'm Pete Francis. We'll see you next time.